Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 31, Networking.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hi, welcome to Small Biz Life. My name's Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And if you're new to the podcast, thank you so much for listening today. I am a certified public accountant that helps small business owners grow their business by thinking outside the box.
And I'm an IT analyst who lives way, way outside of the box.
So today we're going to talk about networking. And we're going to talk about both online and offline networking. When I grew my CPA firm, I did not spend any money on advertising. I built my entire firm through networking. So we're going to spend a good chunk of time talking about offline networking because I think a lot of people don't really talk about that. But we're also going to talk about some techniques for online marketing as well.
Yes.
So this is a fun episode for me because I like to network. I really do. I know that this is something that people have a lot of fear over. And if you're having trouble with that, go back and listen to episodes 29 and 30. Okay. But this is something that's like near and dear to my heart. I love doing this. So I think the first thing that you need to think about when you start thinking about networking and where and how you want to network is you've got to think about the scope of your business. And what I mean by that is, are you a local business, or a regional business, or are you a national business? So if you're an online business, then you're a national business, right? Yeah. You're trying to sell all over the country. If you have like a local storefront, then the majority of your networking is going to be local with some online networking. If you have an online store, then you're going to want to do some national as well, right? If you really want to grow your business. So you've got to think about, how do you want to take this business? Do you want to keep it local, right? And my CPA firm originally was local. I did most of my networking face-to-face, group networking, and we'll talk about how I did that. And then I transitioned to do more online, and now I have clients all over the country. So now I'm doing more national networking. And so we'll talk about how we did that as well. So that's the first thing is, where do you want your business to be? If you're a service-based business, if you're doing repair, if you're doing any sort of, B2B where you've got to sit in front of the client, then you may want to start local. And even if you want to be a national online business, it's still good to get some practice locally, build that up locally, build relationships, get those testimonials, and use those to grow bigger.
Yeah.
So these techniques can work for both types of businesses. Even if you're national, your local community should know you exist, right? Because it's a lot easier to grow a business when you're face-to-face with people.
And one of the things I learned in previous careers is the importance of density. So whenever you're starting off, even if you're, like she said, your goal is to grow nationally, you will spend some time, maybe going to shows or doing other things nationally. But whenever you're growing your business, until you can scale it to a larger business where you have more employees, you'll probably start off like with one city and then maybe scale it out to a couple more cities and then keep scaling out to larger metropolitan areas. And then from there into medium size and then into small. But you want to always be cognizant that each area is its own local area. So when you're starting off, always start locally because you can create the most density there quickly, and then start reach out into other areas, but be consistent because you'll also find that there's potential for savings in the way you grow your business if you have density in areas as you grow out.
If you build density in areas, that gives you the opportunity to say, hey, I have a lot of customers in Chicago. I'm going to try to get a speaking engagement in Chicago. Yeah. Or I have a lot of customers in Boston. Let's try to get a speaking engagement in Boston. So kind of look to see where your customers are and where that density is. And that can help guide you to do some networking there.
And then another trick too is to look at who the demographics of your customers and saying, okay, I've now built up New York and Chicago, and looking around my types of customers, I see a lot of them in Austin. So maybe Austin is one of the next towns I go to because I see a similar demographic situation, or San Francisco, or whatever your demographic, wherever your demographic leads you.
Right. And so that's actually a good place to go next, because let's talk a little bit about who your customer is. So you have to identify who your customer is, who that ideal type of customer you want is. And if you haven't listened to episode 4, you might want to go back and listen to that, because it's all about identifying who your ideal customer is. Because there's a big difference between networking for business to consumer, which means your business primarily serves individual consumers, or business to business, which means that your ideal customer is other businesses, because that is totally different networking.
Yeah.
And where you're going to go and who you're going to associate with and the type of events that you're going to go to are going to be completely different.
And your purpose at events are going to be different. If you're focusing on a consumer, you might still go to trade shows, but the idea is probably to learn other people's successful techniques for reaching out to customers, or maybe educating yourself better on newer trends in your industry, and more time in the educational side of it. And if you're going to a consumer show, you'll probably be more focused on trying to meet as many people as you can.
Right. And it also kind of determines, when you're going to different shows, are you going to be what I call, behind the booth, or are you going to be in front of the booths? Because if your primary customer is consumers, then you're probably going to need to have a booth at that show.
Yeah.
Whereas if your primary customer would be other businesses, then you can do either depending on the show. Mm-hmm. I've gone to shows before with a stack of business cards, and I've actually gone and talked to all the booth owners.
Yeah.
Me being at a booth myself would not have been as helpful as me being able to walk around to all of those booths and talk to people.
And that was also, for a business like Kristen, where she provides a service to other businesses, when she goes to a consumer show, it's completely different for her because she's targeting the people behind the booths the same way they're trying to target the people who are in front of the booths.
As we're going through this, we're going to talk about different networking ideas and whether they're good for B2C, which is business to consumer, or whether they're better for B2B. Okay, and kind of how to handle those situations. So it's really important to understand which one you're targeting. Okay. And even if you target both, when you're going to an event, I like to put myself in the headspace of one or the other. When I was growing my firm initially, I was taking on individual clients and business clients. But when I went to an event, I went to an event to focus on one or the other, not both.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you're trying to do both, especially like if you're at a show and you are displaying, you're exhibiting at that show, it's really hard to split your message between the two. So you might cause confusion.
Yeah.
And you might end off putting off both groups.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong. We always talk about avatar, and you hear a lot about having your perfect avatar for your product. But there are always going to be other people who are interested in your product too. So the more important thing than just who the perfect avatar is for your product, but if you're coming out, let's say, with a marketing scheme, or Kristen's saying, for a networking event, who's your avatar for this specific item? And it might not be your normal avatar, but someone who you feel is close enough that you can pull into as well.
Right. Okay, so we're going to start my favorite offline networking group, are chambers of commerce. Chambers of commerce are really good if you're doing B2B. Because
especially local.
Right. A chamber of commerce is a group of business owners in a particular town or region. So where we live, almost every single town has its own chamber of commerce. This is not as good if you're going B2C.
Yeah.
Because unless the chamber has a really good way, like they have a large newsletter that goes out to the community, or they do events that bring the community in, then your B2C is going to be kind of weak on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the things too is, even if you're B2C though, don't be afraid to check out your local chamber. You're going to interact with it differently. You're not going to be worried so much about going to the breakfast speaking events. You're going to be more worried about getting your events into their calendar or into their newsletter if they have reach on those, because it's free advertising usually, or maybe low cost.
One thing to consider with all of these groups that we're going to talk about, you cannot just pop in once and expect that you're going to walk out with business. This is relationship building. This is relationship marketing, which means that you need to go on a regular basis. You need to build relationships. You need to get to know people. You know, a lot of people say, well, I joined a chamber and I didn't get any business. And I said, okay, well, how many events did you go to? Well, I went to 2.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not going to work. You know, and just joining a chamber, like forking over the $100 or whatever it is to join, is also not going to be effective.
No.
Because you're going to get a listing on their website and that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so with any of these networking ideas, you have to build relationships. And that doesn't matter if you're doing online or offline. Okay, this works the same way. One of the misconceptions about a chamber of commerce is that you can only join the chamber for the town or the county that you live in. When I built my business, I found a number of chambers in my area where I wanted clients. Mm-hmm. And actually, for me, the most successful one was a chamber that was like 4 towns away.
Yeah.
I had some clients in that chamber. I knew people in that chamber. I joined it. I did a lot of networking with them. I actually sat on their board of directors for a while. That helped me build relationships in that area, and I built a lot of business in that area.
And one of the great strengths, if you have the time to be able to do it, is if you are active in the Chamber of Commerce, either as a volunteer or someone who serves on the board, if you perform functions that the people who run the chamber find useful, if you're targeting customers or businesses, when people ask them, and they will, who do I go to for accounting? Who do I go to for getting my computer worked on? The people who sponsor events, the people who volunteer, those are the names that will come to their mind first.
Right.
And then the better relationship you have with them on top of that, the more likely your name is to come up first.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's all about building those relationships. So find the chambers in your area that have really good events that you can network at, that you can build relationships at, and that have the type of customer that you want. Mm-hmm. So if your local chamber doesn't seem to have your avatar in it, then look a couple towns over.
Yeah.
You know, if your product is a higher end product, join the chambers in more affluent towns, you know, in your area. You're not limited.
Yeah. And the thing to keep in mind is even though this is stronger for B2B, depending on the chamber, like in the town we live in, our chamber does some events that are meant for general public to be attracted. And they do a chili fest, you know. So the thing is, maybe you're not super wrapped up in working with the chamber on every event, and you shouldn't put your energy into that. But if they have like an annual thing, like a chili fest, where they try and draw in a whole bunch of people, you want to be there. You want to have chili. You want to be a judge. You want to be as active in that specific event, because that will help get you in front of actual people who might be your consumer.
Exactly. So there are opportunities for B2C in chambers. I know some chambers have, like, they'll sponsor a home show or a consumer show. And so it might be good to be in that chamber so you can be involved in that event. Mm-hmm. So you've just got to kind of look at it. And the thing that I found is a lot of chambers for larger cities, if you want to work with small businesses, they're not going to have a lot of small business members. Yeah. So we have a chamber here in the Hartford area, and it's mostly really big companies. And so if you're looking for small businesses, then that might not be a good avenue for you to go. So the nice thing is that most chambers have a member list on their website, and you can go through and see the type of businesses that are on there and whether or not that would be a good fit for you.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to talk about are conferences. Conferences have a lot of different opportunities for you to network. You can be a speaker at a conference. You can have a booth at a conference because most conferences have like a vendor area. You can just go and network.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend that the first time you go to a conference, you just go there to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? Bring a whole bunch of business cards and just meet as many people as you can. Check out what the vendors are doing and see if that's something that might be effective for you next
Mm-hmm.
year. You know, look at all the speakers and say, okay, if I spoke at this conference, would I be hitting my avatar here?
Yeah.
Because speaking at a conference is a great way to quickly network with a lot of people. And it will actually, if you present effectively, it will draw people to you.
Yeah.
And people will seek you out. So if you have a lot of trouble with like initial introductions, speaking is a great way to get past that.
And a great tip, and I forget which thought leader, and this might have, it's unimportant who. One of the great things that you can do, like if you have a speaking thing, make sure when you're done to go put in your social media, oh, hey, going over to get a snack and a drink over at XY Cafe at the conference. And people, if they like you, they're maybe already starting to follow you on Twitter or on Facebook. You go into your Foursquare and say, I'm now here. However you use social media, put it out where you're going to be and for how long. And hopefully people will know where to come get you. The thing you don't want to do is stand in the back of the room and networking with people while the next speaker is talking.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you clear out so that people can, you know, get to the next speaker.
Yeah.
Right. But it's really, that's a great use of social media. Make sure that if you are a speaker that you put your social media out there somewhere in, you know, a lot of times you have a slide presentation. Make sure that you put that up there so that people can interact with you later at the conference.
Use any preparation materials, give away for free through your newsletter. To help drive traffic into your newsletter as well, too, because me specifically, I know for a fact that I hate taking notes. I like to really ingest what I'm hearing, but I want notes too. And that will inevitably get someone like me. I will be on my phone afterwards, or sometimes if there's a lull during the conversation or during the speech, I'll be on my phone trying to make sure I can actually get access to those.
Right.
And if you do that, be upfront with it so those people won't feel like they need to take notes and they can interact more with you on stage.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good tip. Another really good way to network is through events. This is really good for B2C. So if you want to network locally, but you're not sure how to find people, you know, look for events in your town or in neighboring towns. Let's say, for example, that you have a product for new moms. There are a lot of events at local libraries for new moms or for moms with young kids. Look for things like that. You know, go to the local farmers market, talk to people. Mm-hmm. This is kind of weird for people in New England. I know if you're from New England, you know, we don't really talk to people, but it's a really good way, to practice, right? And just to get to know people better. Get involved in moms groups, get involved in events at your church, get involved with your library. If there's a park in your town, get involved with, go to the local park when it's busy.
Now I have to share a story. There was a barbecue place that opened up a couple of years ago in Connecticut, which is exciting because this is not what you would call barbecue country. And we kept hearing about these guys coming in and how they're supposed to have authentic barbecue. And we've heard that before, and we've gone to places, and there's just not a lot of very good barbecue around here. So you wonder and you think about it. My wife and I were at an event. I don't even remember what the event was, but it was at a park in town. And we go there, and they are there with food, just giving out free samples to people. They probably had some budget set up for how much they would give away. And my wife and I were there the day it opened because of that. And we had to go there and eat because, one, they shared a little bit with us and we ate it, and it was delectable, and meatball M&Ms. Sorry, I got distracted. But that simple fact that they were there, they were giving of themselves to let us just try it out to see if we liked it without having to pay goes a long way. So if you have the budget to do it, and that local library has an event, and you're like, hey, do you mind if I give away some of my healthy snack food to the people who show up for your event? The libraries will probably do it because they're hoping more people are going to show up for their events, and having free stuff given away, they probably won't say no to. But it's a good way for you to do some quick marketing to let people test out your products as well.
Right. So, look for community events like that you can participate in. And sometimes it's even just going and talking to people that are there. If there's an opportunity for you to get a booth, especially this is great for restaurants or for companies that deal in food. Mm-hmm. This is a great way for you to kind of get out there into the community. So another option, we talked about this a little bit already, would be trade shows and consumer shows. And trade shows are more B2B, consumer shows are B2C. Typically, these are really good if you have the setup in order to do a booth.
Yeah.
Okay. But even so, you can attend these events without being a vendor. Mm-hmm. And, here's where I think a lot of businesses go wrong when they're attending trade shows or consumer shows. I said, I told you before that I go around, I talk to businesses. What I'll do is I'll talk to the business about what they do. I'll get their card. If it comes up, I will give them my card. But if not, I'm not going to push it. Mm-hmm. Right? Because they're there to sell their stuff. Mm-hmm. So I will learn as much as I can about them and their business. And then I will follow up with them afterwards. Mm-hmm. So, I saw you at this trade show. You've got a great business. And then introduce who you are.
Yeah, it's very important to remember. Networking is not direct sales or marketing.
Right. So when you're doing networking, a lot of it is you have to be a really good listener when you're doing networking. So determining how they might fit with your ideal customer, that is objective one. You can do more relationship building after you leave, get their card if you have the opportunity to give them yours, but don't push it. Mm-hmm. Because the last thing that people want when they're at a trade show and they're trying to sell their stuff is for you to try to sell them on your stuff. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you're doing a lot of recon, right? Get all the business cards you can, get all the information you can. Don't sell. Okay. That's not the purpose of you going to these. Now, if you are exhibiting at a trade show, then yes, your job is to sell.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to make sure that you have a nice booth. One of the things for trade shows that I think is really important, move the tables away from the front of your booth. Mm. Okay, put the tables on the side, put them in the back, but you want people to be able to come into your booth.
And they can feel a part of your booth.
Right, exactly. Because if you have like a table there, it's like a barrier between you and the people that you're talking to. You want to eliminate those barriers. You want to be able to bring them into the booth.
Now, the only real exception I think of to this are people who are doing food at shows. Because one, you get to have a whole bunch of stations set up with smells going out, especially if it's not a food focused one. You can own a show. I've been to some of these like local, like Chamber of Commerce shows that she was talking about earlier, and there'll be like one or two restaurants in there. The ones that actually are heating up and or preparing food on site, you just walk in and you smell it. And it's like, the Pied Piper leading you right to their little hamlet.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so make sure that if you're attending trade shows or consumer shows, know your role.
Yeah.
While you're there. Another really good way, and I think this is good for either B2B or B2C, civic groups. These are things like Rotary, Lions Club, Civitan, JCs. These are groups that do volunteer work in your town.
Or they can even be a church group too. Church, it's not really civic group, but it's the same idea.
Right. This is not somewhere where you're going to do direct selling. This is a place for you to build relationships with people. Mm-hmm. And also a lot of civic groups have events in their towns. So this is also, I found that a lot of people who are in civic groups are actually business owners because they have the flexibility to be able to attend meetings and events.
Yeah. The one thing is you need to understand there's a time commitment to these, and you want to get involved if you can be active. Because one, people are seeing your work ethic firsthand. They're seeing that you're a smart individual who's very helpful. And once again, this gets to where you have to understand, especially in most civic groups, all the ones I know, but more so in some of them, is you're not supposed to talk about your business. And that doesn't mean afterwards you're walking out, someone asks you what you do, you can't tell them. But you're not there at all. You're not approaching your business cards in here unless someone says, oh, how do I get a hold of you? That's when you give them your business card, but that's the only reason why. You know, when you're at events that you're volunteering to help them in, you're not pitching your business to people who come up to their booth. You're trying to help them do the activity of the booth, which is probably some form of a fundraiser. But the more effective you are, your face becomes more familiar to people. They start recognizing you, and at different points, you've had that first touch already with them.
Right. And this is also too, is that if you're building a local business, people seeing you helping the community helps people trust you faster, and it makes them want to do business with you. So while you're not going to do any direct selling in a civic group, it helps raise your profile in the community, and it helps you meet other people that you could potentially do business with. You're just not selling while you're involved with the civic group. Okay. You also don't want to use, the list of members of the civic group to sell to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Don't add their emails to your email newsletter.
Right. And that's the other thing with chambers too. Like, just because you can pull off the chamber list off their website, don't use that, for marketing. Don't say, hey, I saw that you were on the chamber website and I'm a chamber member too. You want to buy my stuff? Don't do that. It just annoys chamber members, and it annoys the leadership of the chamber. Yeah. So you don't want to do that. Okay. So let's transition more to online. Okay. So, and this can work too if you're a local business, right? Because a lot of local communities have some of these avenues for you that you can participate in. So the first thing that I think is really important is I want you to go to your Facebook profile, and I want you to make sure that as as your workplace, that your business is listed as your current job, and that the business name is a link to your page, your Facebook page. Because what I find happens a lot of times is when I'm networking online, people will, they'll click on my name and they will look at, oh, she's the owner of, she's the co-host of the Small Biz Life podcast. I'm going to go like that page. And then now I'm interacting with them through my page. Okay. So that's a really good thing to do. And I know people have privacy concerns about what they do and do not show on Facebook. If you are a business owner, make sure that your profile is cleaned up, and make sure that that is something that people can see. Because if somebody's interested in you and they click on their profile, it's because they're interested in your business. And
also understand too that if on Facebook in your profile, you're big about politics or pro or anti-religion, when they click through your profile, they're going to see your post. And I'm a big advocate of free speech, and you have a right to say what you want to, but understand some of your customers might not agree with you on those issues. You might be pro-Trump. They might be anti-Trump. You might be pro-Bernie. They might be anti-Bernie. Whatever the circumstance is, they're a Democrat, you're a Republican. There's sometimes rash judgments made based off of political or religious affiliations. And I'm not saying don't share that kind of stuff, but understand that there is a potential consequence, sometimes positive and sometimes negative. It just all depends on that person who's clicking through.
Well, and and that's the thing for me, I post a lot of things that are libertarian. I post a lot of things that support lower taxes and better business environment. And if people don't like that, then I probably don't want to work with their business.
And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying just understand there's always a cost to that.
Right.
But do understand if 100% of your posts are all like topical on this one thing, even people you care about might stop looking at your profile.
Right. So, but that's, like my avatar is a free market person.
Mm-hmm.
So if I post stuff about free markets and people don't like it,
Mm-hmm.
then they're not my avatar anyway. So it kind of swings both ways, that you might actually see people go, oh, wow, this person's a free market person. I'm a free market person. They're a little bit more libertarian. I'm libertarian. I like that. We'll work well together. But if somebody is, a socialist and they look at my profile, then they might not like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to you just have to remember that what you put on Facebook or what you put on Twitter is public. And it's really hard as a small business owner to say, this is my public persona. This is what I want people to see. Mm-hmm. But even if you're trying to separate the two, I've had a lot of people say, well, can't I just have like a separate Facebook profile that I use for business? Well, the problem is if somebody Googles you, they're going to find both of them.
Mm-hmm. And trust me, with enough money, they're going to find out what's in your private profile.
So, even if you have two different Twitter accounts and one's personal and one's business, if somebody searches for you, they're going to find both of them.
And, and definitely don't be afraid to share your beliefs. Just be thoughtful that when you're sharing them, people of different beliefs might be reading it. And if you're being overly passionate about this outrage from someone you disagree with, they're going to see that as well, too. And even people who agree with you might be turned off. If you use vile language, people who agree with you might not like the fact that you said this, even if they don't like the person you're talking about.
Exactly. Okay. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right. So one thing that you can do online is, and this is something, everybody talks about this. You can do guest blogging. Mm-hmm. You can do you be a guest on a podcast. You can be a guest on someone's blab. I did that a couple weeks ago. That was really fun. You can connect with other people so that they will put you in front of their audience. Mm-hmm. And that's something that it's a great way to get some free publicity. And there are local blogs that you can be on. There are local podcasts you can be on. A lot of local newspapers are always looking for people to write for them. This is a really good way for you to get in front of a larger audience. Mm. So if there's a blog that you really like that you think would be a good fit, don't just blindly send them an article. Don't just blindly say, hey, I want to write for you. Because it's like, I get requests like that all the time for my sites and for this show. And if I don't know who you are and I can clearly tell you haven't listened to the show, then I'm just going to ignore you.
Or if you're doing the blind approach, make sure that you use something, even if it's very quickly thought out, like, let me go look at a couple of the recent blog posts and, mention specific stuff about the site or podcast in it, because I got one just last week for my other show, and someone wanted to interview me for theirs. They approached me through my newsletter, which I tell people to do. If you ever want to talk to me, just sign up for my newsletter and just reply to any of them. It goes straight to me. They did what I asked them to. They just said a few things about why they like my show, and it started a conversation between us.
Yeah. Whereas I've gotten some for this show where they said, I really like how you interview guests. You have great guests on your show. You've clearly not listened to the show because we've never had a guest on this show.
Yeah.
So you didn't even take the time to listen to my show.
Yeah. It's really unfair for you and them if you take the time to at least read one of the blog posts and talk about it, listen to one of the episodes and talk about it, watch one of the episodes and talk about it. If you're not willing to do that, do you really want to be a guest on their platform? Because you might find out too that, I like to talk about becoming debt free, and I realize that this is a blog and the person keeps pushing payday loans.
Right. Not a good fit. So, show some interest. And the other thing that you can do too, if you're soliciting to be on somebody's podcast or their blog or write for, a local papers, you can say, hey, I've got a couple hundred people on my email list. I have a couple hundred people on my Facebook page, and I'd love to be able to share your content with them. Is there something you'd like me to share? And then if they write back and they're like, yeah, I'm really trying to promote this right now, help them promote that. There's, if you're on Twitter, there's a site that's called twitterfeed.com. And what you can do is you can actually put in somebody else's RSS feed from their website and you will automatically tweet it out. And so if there's somebody that you're trying to get on their radar to write for them or to be on their podcast, you can set that up in your Twitter feed and all their new content will be shared with all of your people. And that's a great way to say, hey, I really like your stuff. Let me help you. And then later on, you can ask them for help.
And the thing to keep in mind is understand the size of their audience. Try and get an idea from the engagement. The bigger they are in comparison to you, the more time and effort you're going to want to put in before you pitch them.
Yeah. So, share out their stuff, get involved in their community, comment on their posts. Try to get on their radar so that when you email them, they're at least like, oh, yeah, I remember this person commenting on my site.
Or if you're sharing their stuff through your feed, if they're online a lot and they're putting out an article a day on their website, they go click through your Twitter feed and they see, oh, just a few minutes after my new thing went up, there's actually a tweet out from this person about my show. That's going to be impactful. Right.
Because as online content developers, we watch that stuff. We do look at that. So
and if you talk to me in Twitter, the first thing I do is I go to your Twitter feed.
And check out to see what you're tweeting about. Okay. You can also do guest speaking. So this is where, you can speak at conferences. I've done a lot of speaking engagements through chambers of commerce where I will put together a piece of curriculum for them. They will promote that to their members and to the community, and then I'll go in and speak on a topic. I've done a webinar for our local entrepreneur center, which I also promoted to my audience as well. So even though they promoted it locally, I promoted it nationally. And, we had a mix of people from both areas. So think about the groups that are in your area, think about their memberships, and then approach them and say, hey, listen, I would love to speak to your group on this. Do you ever have opportunities where I could speak? With chambers, typically they'll do either early morning, they'll do lunchtime, or they'll do after hours.
Yeah.
And so you can get involved with something like that. You can also, if they've never done anything like that before, help them create a speaker series where say, hey, listen, for the next 4 months, the first Tuesday of every month, we're going to have a speaker and they're all tied in together. So like for me as an accountant, I might want to say, listen, we're going to do a small business series. I'm going to find, let's reach out to an attorney that's in the chamber. Would you like to speak on how to set up your business correctly? Get an insurance person, say, hey, can you talk about business insurance? I'm going to talk about the tax stuff. And then, maybe a financial advisor talk about retirement options for small business and have it go as a series, over 4 weeks or over 4 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So lots of opportunities for you to guest speak, especially if you're local. It doesn't have to be your event. You can use another organization to help you promote an event. Okay. And then this is something that you have to be really careful about. Okay. I love participating in other people's groups. Once you know who your avatar is, who your ideal customer is, you can find groups on Facebook that you can join where your avatar is. We talked about young moms before. There are lots of mommy groups on Facebook. There are lots of business groups on Facebook. You can go out and join those groups. Okay. Couple things. Read the rules of the group. Okay. Because you want to make sure that you don't violate any of those terms and conditions. And a lot of groups will have very specific rules. You can't promote yourself in a post. You can't post your own content unless it's on a particular day.
Sometimes even in a specific thread.
Right. Like a lot of the groups I'm in, they're different. There's one day of the week where the owner of the group puts up a thread, and we do that in our group, right? and you can promote yourself in that thread and only in that thread.
And I prefer that because I like seeing what other people are doing. And for me, it's easier to find it when it's in a thread. So I really like it when people actually have those instead of a day when you go in and you just get a feed of a bunch of different stuff. And the person who owns the group and their best friend, they're always at the top and yours disappears right away. And there's some groups are like that and it's okay. But, I like going through all of the stuff to see if there's something interesting I haven't found before. So if you have a group, consider, if you have a sharing day to have a thread for it because I like it.
Right. And the nice thing too is that that's also a really good way for you to find blogs to guest post on, podcasts that you might want to be a guest on. It's a really good way to find other people to connect with.
And beware of groups that you go into and join that all they appear to be is content that is being shared. And not just by that person, but and this happens all of the time where people join groups and then they just start sharing their content all the time. And these are groups without rules. And this has happened to me. I've made groups that have devolved into that. And then I don't go to the groups anymore myself. The thing I find is those kind of groups are not useful. Don't even waste your time putting your thing in there because the only thing people do in those groups are they copy and paste their current post or they share it into that group and they move on. The only thing it would be useful for, and this is like Kristen keeps going back to, understand where you're at. If you're looking for places to share content to, these might get you ideas of blogs to go out and look for. However, I would once again probably be leery to be in a blog that does that. So it might also tell you who you don't want to be involved with.
Right. But I think on those sharing threads, I will go through, I will take a look at the person's website. I'll click through their social media to see how many followers they have. Are they engaged? So those threads can be a really good way. But if you're in what I call a lawless group, which means there's no rules, people can do whatever they want. Those are the kind of groups that if people are sharing their content and that's all they're doing, that might not be the sort of page you want to be on. The reason that other people's groups are helpful, okay, is because you can go in there and be a subject matter expert, okay? You can help people by answering their questions. So I'm in a lot of small business groups. And I'm very lucky to have a community of people, as I said in the last episode, that tag me on stuff. So if somebody has a business question, I can go through and I can help them with their business question. Now, if it's something that's pretty simple, I can go in, I can answer their questions. Sometimes they ask follow-up questions and I'll go through and I'll answer those. If it's something that's really complicated, then I will answer as much of their question as I can, right, in a reasonable period of time. And then say, listen, this is kind of a complicated subject. If you'd like to message me, feel free to do so. And the way I have Facebook set up is that I have it set up that I can receive messages from anybody. A lot of people don't like that because they think they're going to get lots of spam messages. I do occasionally get spam messages, but I think
they've gotten better with that. Yeah.
They have. A lot of times what I find is that by the time I actually see the spam message,
the person's gone.
The person is gone off of Facebook. So Facebook has gotten a lot better about that. But it allows me to interact with people one-on-one. It also allows me to show, and some of these groups have 15,000 people in them. I will answer a question, and we talked about frequently asked questions in the last episode. A lot of times it's a frequently asked question. And so I will answer that question. There's a whole bunch of people that are reading that because they have that same question. I'll get a lot of likes on it. And I'll actually notice that what people will do is after I've done something like that, they will click on my profile, go, oh, she has a podcast called Small Biz Life. I have a small business. I'm going to go like her page. Yeah. And then, now they're part of my community. So it's a really good way, it helps you build your confidence because you're helping people. It helps you network. The thing that I don't like, and I saw this recently in a group, don't go into the group when somebody asks a question, say, oh, I can help you. Here's my website.
Yeah.
Just answer the question.
Or here's my blog post on that topic.
Right. Or oh, I'm an expert on that and let me tell you all my credentials, but I'm not going to help you, but you can contact me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's effective.
Mm-hmm.
I think it turns a lot of people off.
Yeah.
I will go in, I will help people. Usually I don't promote myself at all. If I can help somebody, I'll help them. And if they say, oh, thank you, that was helpful, I'll say, hey, by the way, you might want to check out my podcast episode on that for more information.
Yeah.
But I don't just lead with, oh, I did a podcast on that, or oh, I've got a blog post on that.
And the thing to not be sucked in the other direction is don't feel you have to take the time to completely answer every question 100%. Sometimes when people aren't subject matter experts and they need help in something, they think it's very simple for someone who's an expert in it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. And sometimes it's just the opposite, where the more complicated they think it is, the easier it is for you to deal with quickly. The thing is, if you can answer it quickly and help them, do it. If it's more complicated, have your elevator pitch answer ready and give just that and say, but this is really more complicated. Message me, or however way you want to interact with them. Go with that approach after you give them a short, very abstract answer and with a little explanation of why it's really too much to answer here.
Right. But the thing that I want you to remember, most of these groups are created by someone else to help them promote their business. Mm-hmm. And it is rude, kind of like what we did, when we were talking about the trade shows. Mm-hmm. It's really rude for you to go in there and try to take over their group by promoting yourself. Mm-hmm. Even if a group doesn't have a lot of rules, I try to be really respectful of that this is somebody else's group. I'm not going to hijack it. Just like if you go to a trade show, it is, if you don't have a booth, it is not your job to sell people who have booths, mm-hmm. right? You're collecting information. And I do the same thing. I collect information. I will interact with people. I'll be helpful. I'll answer their questions. And that's why I have my Facebook profile that says I do a podcast called Small Biz Life. Mm-hmm. And it's funny. I've noticed on days where I've been really, really helpful on a lot of different groups, I see the podcast numbers spike. Mm-hmm. Because people will go in and they'll check out a couple episodes.
Yeah.
You don't have to direct sell all the time.
No.
We said this about email lists. We said this, and we're saying it again. Networking is not about selling. It is about building relationships with people so you can sell to them later.
And remember, because this comes back to the thing that direct sellers will always talk about, or people who try to talk about selling, whether it's direct or indirect sales, there are a number of touches you need to make with people before they buy your product. Networking is a way to achieve those touches in a relationship building way.
Exactly. So they said on average, it takes 7 touches before someone will buy your product. So if you help them in somebody else's group, that might be a couple touches, especially if they ask a lot of questions. If you invite them to contact you for, to help them further, that's another touch. If somebody private messages me and I help them out and they thank me for that, I will say, oh, you might want to check out my podcast, or you might want to join my email newsletter. Mm-hmm. That's where I'll kind of make the next step and say, okay, if you want to engage with me more, this is a way you can do it.
It's a way to start that sales funnel, the thing they always love to talk about. And then you're like, what is the sales funnel? It's this way of pulling them in towards your sales pitch.
Right. And if you think about, if you've heard the term sales funnel before, the whole premise of that is based on the 7 touches in mm-hmm. order to get somebody to buy.
You're in step 4. That means you've been touched 3 times and they're currently touching you right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds weird.
Kind of creepy.
Yeah, it does sound kind of creepy. Maybe that's why they call it a sales funnel. Because that sounds far less creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope that in the next week that you will find opportunities to find your avatar both locally and online and find a way to interact with them. You know, if you sit at your desk all day long and just expect that people are going to come to you, not always going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so get out there, build some relationships with people, build up some rabid fans that are willing to help you grow your business. You'll be much better off for it. So thanks so much. We'll see you again next week. Thank you for listening to Small Biz Life. If you enjoyed the show, please take a few minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Please visit smallbizlife.com to view today's show notes, take this week's poll, join the Facebook community, follow us on Twitter, or submit a question for the mailbag. Support the show by checking the resources page or by going to smallbizlife.com/Amazon whenever you shop.
This was Small Biz Life. This was Small Biz Life.